Picture this. You are standing barefoot in the center of the Roman Colosseum. The sand beneath your feet is burning hot. 50,000 people are screaming from the stone seats above you, and you know with absolute certainty that in a few seconds, a steel gate is going to open and a starving lion is going to tear you apart in front of all of Rome. Your crime? You sold fake jewelry to the emperor's wife. The iron gate screeches open. You close your eyes. You wait for the roar. Instead, you hear a confused clucking sound. You open your eyes. Walking out of the dark cage is not a lion. It is a chicken. A small, bewildered, completely harmless chicken. The entire arena goes silent. Then it erupts into laughter. Emperor Gallienus leans forward from his balcony and shouts to the crowd, "He committed fraud, so now he has been defrauded." You walk home alive while the most powerful empire on earth laughs at you. That actually happened, but do not let it fool you. That chicken was a one-time joke in the history of civilization. For virtually everyone else who got caught cheating, lying, or betraying trust in the ancient world, the consequences were so brutal, so bizarre, and so creatively cruel that they make modern prison sentences look like a vacation. So what actually happened to cheaters in the ancient world? Let's start with something familiar: sports. We think of the ancient Olympic Games as this noble celebration of human excellence, fair competition, honor, sportsmanship. The reality was nothing like that. Ancient athletes were not humble amateurs competing for glory. They were ruthless professionals chasing massive wealth, political power, and permanent fame. And wherever the stakes are that high, people cheat. But getting caught cheating at Olympia did not just end your career. It destroyed your name for eternity. The Olympic judges would impose enormous fines on anyone caught bribing opponents or breaking rules. And with that money, they commissioned giant bronze statues of Zeus. These statues were not placed in some forgotten corner. They were installed in a precise line directly at the entrance to the stadium. Every athlete walking in to compete had to pass through this corridor of shame, and carved into the stone base of each statue, in letters that would last for centuries, was the cheater's name, his city, and exactly how he had cheated. The most famous case was a boxer named Eupolos from Thessaly. In 388 BC, he bribed 3 of his opponents to lose their fights. His punishment was not a fine and a quiet ban. It was a permanent monument to his dishonesty that every Olympic athlete would walk past for the next 500 years. There was also a wrestler named Serapion from Alexandria, who was so terrified of his opponents that he fled the sacred grounds the night before his match. He became the only man in history to receive a statue specifically for cowardice. And here is the worst part. The shame did not stay with the athlete. It spread to his entire city. When an Athenian wrestler named Calipos was caught cheating, the city of Athens was so humiliated that they boycotted the Olympics entirely. But public humiliation was the gentle version. When it came to money, the ancient world went straight to killing. Jump to Babylon, around 1800 BC. King Hammurabi wrote one of the oldest and most brutal legal codes in history. And in ancient Babylon, beer was not just a casual drink, it was a staple food. Workers were literally paid in beer. Almost every tavern in the city was run by women. And if one of those tavern owners decided to water down the beer, use rigged scales, or charge unfair prices, Hammurabi's code had a very specific solution. Law number 108. The fraudulent tavern keeper shall be seized, bound, and thrown into the Euphrates River. Not dunked as a warning, thrown in and held under until she drowned. The Babylonians called it the river ordeal. They believed the river god himself was delivering the verdict. If you sank, you were guilty. If you somehow survived, the gods had cleared you. Later versions of Babylonian law replaced drowning with something arguably worse, but I will let you look that one up yourself. In Rome, counterfeiting money was treated as an attack on the empire itself. If you were caught shaving coins or coating cheap lead with a thin layer of silver, which was a common trick, the punishment depended on your social status. If you were a citizen, you were sent to the mines, which was effectively a slow death sentence. If you were lower class, you were either crucified or thrown into the arena to be torn apart by wild animals in front of a cheering crowd. The Romans had a formal legal term for this. They called it damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to the beasts. They even had specialized inspectors called numulari who walked the streets testing coins for authenticity. Imagine a plainclothes financial crimes unit, except instead of a court date, the penalty was being eaten alive by a tiger. But all of these punishments, as extreme as they are, were nothing compared to what happened when you betrayed the most sacred bond of all: marriage. In the ancient world, adultery was not treated as a private relationship problem. It was considered a direct attack on the family, the community, and the state, and the punishments reflected that. In classical Athens, around the 5th century BC, a husband who caught another man with his wife had legal permission to seize the man on the spot. What followed was a punishment so notorious that historians still debate whether it was real or exaggerated. It was called raphanidosis. The caught lover would be stripped naked. Then, to maximize both pain and humiliation, a large radish was forced into his body in a way I will describe only by saying it involved the part of the anatomy you are probably already imagining. In some accounts, a spiny fish was used instead. Hot ash was poured over his genitals, and his body hair was ripped out by the roots. The playwright Aristophanes describes this practice in detail in his comedy The Clouds. The Greek word for radish roughly translates to easily made visible. The entire point was to mark the cheater, inside and out, so completely that he could never show his face in public again. A man who survived raphanidosis was socially dead. His reputation was finished. In ancient Egypt, the punishment for adultery was permanent and visible in a different way. Pharaohs like Horemheb decreed that adulterers would undergo rhinotomy, the complete removal of the nose. This was not just about disfigurement. In Egyptian belief, the nose was the organ through which a person received the spiritual breath of life. Cutting it off did not just ruin your face in this world, it damaged your soul in the afterlife. A person without a nose could not hide their sins from the gods in the kingdom of the dead. Your betrayal was written on your face for eternity. This practice was so widespread across the ancient Near East that centuries later, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian II had his nose sliced off when he was overthrown. The logic was simple. A man without a nose is not a complete man and cannot rule. Justinian later had a replacement nose made from solid gold, raised an army, and took his throne back in one of the bloodiest coups in Byzantine history. But the most systematic and far-reaching adultery laws came from Rome under Emperor Augustus. In 18 BC, Augustus passed a law called the Lex Julia. Overnight, adultery stopped being a family matter and became a crime against the state. A husband who discovered his wife cheating was legally required to report her to the authorities and divorce her immediately. If he failed to do so, he himself would be prosecuted for pimping. If the couple was convicted, the state seized nearly half of their wealth and banished them to 2 separate, tiny, isolated islands in the Mediterranean. They were forbidden from ever seeing each other again. And if the woman's own father caught the pair in his house, Roman law gave him the unrestricted right to kill both his daughter and her lover on the spot, with a sword, legally, no trial needed. Augustus enforced this law so obsessively that he eventually had to use it against his own daughter. Julia was banished to a barren island where she was forbidden from drinking wine or wearing fine clothes. Her father, the most powerful man in the world, never spoke to her again. So the next time you think the modern world is harsh on dishonesty, remember this. In the ancient world, cheating at sports got your name carved into a monument of shame for 500 years. Watering down beer got you drowned in a river. Counterfeiting coins got you fed to lions, and cheating on your spouse got you a radish, a missing nose, or permanent exile on a rock in the middle of the sea. The ancient world was built on order, honor, and fear, and anyone who broke that system felt the full, creative, and merciless weight of ancient justice. Unless, of course, you were lucky enough to get the chicken.